Test 1, 2, just making sure you can hear me and see me. I'm a couple minutes early, but I just want to make sure everything's actually working. So you might be on the Guitar Zoom site. You might be on Facebook. Just say hello. Let me know where you're at. Okay. All right. Make sure I can see. Good. Perfect. Can you hear me okay, everybody? Make sure you can hear me. Hey, Martin. Radstorm Musical Productions. How you doing, bud? Hello from Kentucky. I want to make sure everything's working okay. I'm going to play a little bit of a jam track here. I just want to see if you can hear, just in case we need to talk about some stuff. I want to see if you can hear it okay and hear my guitar okay as well. Are you able to hear both the track and the guitar and everything? Just making sure here. Cool. Okay, good. Looks like everybody can hear it okay, which is great. Hello, Gord. Hello, Ralph. Hello, Bob. Bob says, how long have I been playing? Since I was 13, so I'm 51 now, so figure out that math. 38 years, something like that. Let me know, is the screen backwards for you? Okay? Because if it is, I can switch it around. So I don't know if it's backwards. Let me get caught back up here again. Okay? So let me see here. If I switch this around, give me just a second here. Is that better for you? Because Restream's got new stuff in there. So if that works better, now I know. Okay, so now it should be correct, right? Okay, cool. Yeah. Restream is a great piece of software, but they keep updating things, and then I have to keep trying to fix them. So, okay, now it's right. Perfect. Oh, Ralph says not good. Okay, that's it. Better. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. That's perfect. So now we know. Let me just make sure I've got this. So mirror camera is off. So we should be good here. Okay, now I'm back to normal. Awesome. Okay, so in the guitar sounded good, backing track sounded good, perfect. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started here. We're just going to chat for a while, hang out. I've got to go pick up my daughter from a friend's house in about an hour here, but we've got a lot of time to just hang out and chat. So I was on Facebook earlier. Let me find my Facebook here. And where did it go? Somebody had asked, but I want to use actual names here. Let me find it here. Oh, there's me. I see the live chat there. Okay. Yes, my cat is not here. I don't have my cat here. Okay, so Brian, I don't know if Brian is here, but Brian had asked about stage fright. I'm nervous to get on stage tomorrow. So Brian, if you're out there, let me know if you're out there, and if you're not, that's okay. But I'm going to get to his question first. What guitar is this? This is a Suhr, and this is the Modern Satin, it's called. And it's a new purchase of mine. And I went into a guitar store, local guitar store, which I always do. And, usually I'm not in the market for anything. And this guitar, I played it, and I absolutely fell in love with the neck on it. Now, the neck on it was thicker than I'm normally used to, but it played so great that, and I've been looking for just a plain old kind of looking guitar for a long time, something that, isn't real loud looking or anything like that. Just something kind of normal, and this one was just perfect. And then, of course, I swapped out pickups and put EMGs in there. 81 and 89 is what I put in there. This is actually the 89R, so it's the single coil is flipped over to sound a bit more like a Strat. And then, and I'm not saying this to anybody to do this, but the neck was perfect for doing a little bit of sanding. I did just a little bit of, I use an 800 grit sandpaper, and then I use a little bit of steel wool and just kind of smooth it out. And it just has become one of my absolute favorite guitars. And so, yeah, it's a lot of fun to play. Let's see here. Just got a 7-string guitar. I'm iffy about her so far, but not terrible. Yeah, that's the thing is it for me, and I know we've talked about this many times, but the neck is everything. Like, the brand, it could be a brand I love or not, and it doesn't necessarily mean that the neck is going to stand out. And you could have a brand that you love and go into a guitar store and grab that guitar and go, oh, it's a new whatever from a brand I love. And it still doesn't feel very good. So, that's the thing is for me, what it really comes down to is if I fall in love with the neck and then the rest of it, I can get used to, like with this one, I put the EMGs in and now it's perfect. But the neck I fell in love with. Yeah. It says here, I'm shocked. No Ibanez. Yeah. I play a lot of different guitars. I mean, I love Ibanez obviously, but I don't want to just play gems my entire life. If I can keep finding other guitars out there that feel really good and sound really good. And so this one just wound up being easily one of my favorite guitars. So now I've got this, I've got a couple of my gems, and then I've got that pink Charvel that I'm sure some of you have seen too. Although that one, I don't have EMGs in that. I purposely have different pickups in there. So it sounds a little more classic rock, 80s rock kind of thing. And I'm leaving it that way for that. Jackson Soloists, I love them. Again, same thing. You got to find one that with a neck that you absolutely love on it. That's the most important thing. Hey, Johnny, thanks for being here, buddy. Let's see here. I want to go back to this one. Do I work on my own guitars? I do not. I bring them to a guy in town, a friend in Fargo, and they do all the work. They set up the guitars. They know how I like them set up, so they set them up for me. And I always say, my job is to screw them up and then send them back to them. So I like the neck sanding and things like that, I do all that kind of stuff because I'm doing it very carefully to make sure that it fits comfortably and it feels comfortably. But as far as, intonation and string height and all that kind of stuff, I have all that stuff done. I don't do any of that stuff. So if I did, I'd get so OCD in my brain about it that I'd think it was wrong anyway, and then I'd have to bring it to somebody anyway. So it's easier for me just to give it to somebody and go, please set it up the way I like it, and then get it back and go, this is so much fun to play. And it has been. It's been so much fun to play. So Kenneth is here. How you doing, bud? Roselle is here. Hello. Let's see here. I've got a PRS Mark. Oh, yeah. Don't have it in a 7-string, so I've been hunting for an affordable 7. That's cool. Yeah, that Mark, the PRS Mark, the Holcomb one, is the neck longer on that one, or is that a shorter scale? Because I think that one's got a longer scale too, right? I think it does. The Pink Panther Charvel, yep. This one's got jumbo frets, and they're stainless steel, which is kind of fun. So, yeah, try a Kiesel. They're amazing. Yep, and that's another one too. At NAMM I tend to try them out, but the problem is when you, like for me, I've never done like a mail order kind of thing where I don't play it and then they send it to me and I hope that it's like the one I played somewhere. I like to play the one that I'm going to buy. That's the only problem that I have, and that's a me thing, but that's a big deal for me. So, and being in Fargo, we don't have anybody that sells anything. I think Kiesel is all online anyway, isn't it? I think so. I don't know if they sell any in stores or not. Hello from Rome. Hello. Let's see here. Oh, it's Steve Holmes. How you doing, Steve? Let's see here. I just entered the mid-range market and got my first episode. Congratulations, Damien. That's awesome. I'm loyal to the Gibson Les Paul. Very, very cool. That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. That's the thing, is whatever works is the key, right? But for me, like I said, it isn't just a brand loyalty thing. Like I love Ibanez. I absolutely adore them. I've been playing them my whole life. But there's so many great brands out there that if I go in and I try something and the neck is just, I know I can work with it and the rest of it can be dealt with, it's hard to say no. And it doesn't happen very often. Like, it's not like I buy guitars very often, because I don't. But if I find something, and for me, what I can do is if I find something that I really love, I'll take a couple other guitars that I like, but I'm not absolutely infatuated with, and I can always trade those in or do something like that. Okay? Let's see here. What band, musicians back in the day made you want to play guitar? Well, it depends on how far back. If we go all the way back to when I didn't play guitar, the guys that I listened to before I started playing guitar were very much Jimi Hendrix. I was a huge Hendrix fan. Guys like Ted Nugent, Rush, a lot of early Rush stuff like Hemispheres and 2112 and things like that I was really into. But I think that the one person that probably made me want to play the most would be Ace Frehley from Kiss. Once I got, because I was born in 1970, so I was a little kid when I was approached about Kiss, like 7, 8 years old. And it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen, maybe 9 years old, but it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen in my entire life. So those were the bands and the artists that kind of made me. Kansas, Styx, there's just a lot of bands like that I loved the guitar stuff. And so when I started playing, then it changed. When I started playing, then I was infatuated with, the dual guitar stuff of Iron Maiden and Thin Lizzy and Randy Rhoads, and the whole 80s thing with Warren DeMartini and Aussie guitar players later like Jay Healy and that sort of thing were just huge for me. And I'm trying to think. Obviously, then there was the Steve Vai and Joe Satriani and all those guys, all the Shrapnel stuff that started happening. That all was Tony McAlpine and Kristen Pelletieri and all that kind of stuff. I just loved all that playing. Yngwie Malmsteen was huge for me. Huge. Night and day difference when I heard Yngwie Malmsteen, and I went, that's completely different. Now I see the similarities between him and some of the stuff that, Deep Purple was doing and things like that. But, at the time I had no idea, I wasn't really thinking of it that way. But let's see here. Do I have a tech on the road? Yeah, usually I do. It depends on how long on the road I am. If I'm just going out for a little bit, then I wouldn't. But if I'm going out for a while, then I would. A lot of times what happens is you'll have somebody that's traveling with you that will wind up being kind of the all-around. It might be a manager that does tech stuff, or a buddy that comes along and does tech stuff, or different kinds of things like that. But usually my guitars hold up just fine, like string changing and all that. I do all that kind of stuff myself. And before I do anything like that, I make sure that the guitars are ready to go, because if you're only on the road for a few days or a week or 2 weeks or even a month, nothing tragic should happen in that amount of time, hopefully anyway. So I've never had anything terrible like that happen. But let's see here. How do you get your tone? I would love to have it. Well, I think a lot of people say part of the tone is in your fingers, and I know that's a silly thing to say sometimes, but I think it's kind of true. Like for me, I've always told people that the way the let's call it the confidence spectrum, okay? The way the confidence spectrum works for me is it starts with a guitar that feels right. And by that, I mean the neck feels good. The strings that are on it are the right size for the scale length of the fretboard, all that kind of stuff. You've got that part dialed in. The strings are where they, whether you like them close or whether you like them further away or whatever, but you dial that part in, okay? Like I just said to you, when I go to a store and try something out, it's got to be that, because if it's not that, even if the guitar sounds incredible, but it doesn't play well, up here, I'm having an issue. So I can't, that doesn't work for me. It's got to start here, okay? So on this confidence spectrum, if you will, it starts with finding the right guitar neck, okay? Then, and being completely honest, I like 2 humbuckers. I love the 89 because I can split it into a single coil, okay, and then do that. But having like the humbucker and 2 single coils like I have on my Charvel, which is sitting over there somewhere, I love it. But it wouldn't be a guitar that I would be confident playing on stage. And again, it might be just a psychological thing, but it wouldn't be. I like having 2 humbuckers and then being able to split that humbucker as needed. I always like to have enough to do what I want to do, and then I can always back off, versus the pickup isn't giving me enough, and then I got to use a pedal to supplement that. Now that can work fine, but that doesn't work in my brain. So I like having the 2 humbuckers, and certainly the EMGs are a staple of that comfort zone for me. This 81, this 89. I've got all kinds of different EMG pickups that I've tried, and some of them are absolutely wonderful. But I still go back to this because it feels right in my hands and in my brain. It all works. So once I've got that dialed in, then I can go to the amp. So for me, the amp is always the last thing in the chain. Whether I'm playing through an EVH or over there, you probably can't see it, but I've got my Hughes and Kettner, I've got a Metza Barba, I've got the Kemper, I've got all these different things. And that will always be the last thing in the chain, and I will dial that amp in to what this is. And it's always easy to dial in because I know what I'm going to get. The sounds, the way this guitar sounds versus the way one of my gem sounds isn't going to be night and day different from each other in terms of tone once I've put these pickups in there. You know what I mean? So that's the way it goes for me, where some people like the amp is the first thing, and maybe that's a good question. I can't see all your chats right now. You guys can see it better than I can because I'm talking, and it'll take me forever to go through this. But what's your signal chain like of confidence, not of which pedal and stuff, but of confidence? Like for me, it has to start with the guitar and the comfortability of the strings, the neck, the setup. And once that's there, then I go to the pickups and I set that up. And once I get that, then I can go wherever. Now, right now I'm playing through the Kemper. Okay. And with the Kemper, there's a million tones that you can get. But I'll tell you, for those of you that might have a Kemper or something like that, a Quad Cortex or Axe-FX or whatever it might be, again, dealing with this confidence spectrum thing, I love the sound of this Kemper running through a speaker. So, yeah, you can see it if I move out of the way there. You can see there's a little orange cabinet on the floor over there, right over there. And so that's what I hear. So when I'm making videos or I'm practicing or whatever, that's what I hear. Now, when I'm rehearsing, I'll use something bigger. But for this, so when I'm talking to you right now, what I'm hearing is that cabinet back there. What you're hearing is the Kemper running direct into my audio interface. That's what's going out to you. That doesn't sound as confident to me when I'm playing. Now, if I record a part with my Kemper, whatever I'm writing or recording or whatever it might be, and then I go back and record that part again and then pan them, then it sounds like an album to me. Then that works for me. But just sitting here jamming, the best way it sounds to me, if this makes sense to you, is to run a speaker, an external speaker. That's how it sounds best to me, right? Where if I turn that volume off and just hear myself through my studio monitors, it sounds less real to me, right? It sounds like you're playing through headphones. And that's always been, even live, that's always been an issue for me, is I don't like things to sound like they're just through headphones. I like things to sound real. Now, when I'm recording, it can have that studio sound because it's going to have that, right? Even if you took a real amp and put a mic in front of it and recorded it and then listened to it, you're listening to it through speakers, right? You're not listening to it through your 412 anymore. You're listening to it through studio speakers or headphones or whatever. So when I'm in the room, I like to hear a cabinet, if that makes sense. Hello, Chris. Thank you for being here. So anyway, back to that. That's how I get my tone, okay? And then the rest of it is always just the way you approach, the way you palm mute and the way you pick and... all that kind of stuff comes into play after. Turn it down just a little bit there. Let's see here. Love that Charvel you have. Yeah, I love it too. It's really great. And like I said, I love it. It's just if I was playing live, it wouldn't be a guitar I would go to simply because it doesn't have that confidence element that I like to be able to play the way I want to play in the bands I play. I mean, the stuff I play is mostly rock, heavy rock, metal stuff, right? But for recording and playing in the studio and all that kind of stuff, it is absolutely a blast. And I love it because it isn't EMGs. It's something completely different. So it sounds very different, and it's great for recording. So, hey, Scott, glad you're here, bud. Let's see here. Let's keep going. Oh, hey. Well, I hope you had a good Thanksgiving. Mine was great. It was nice and relaxing, which was really, really nice. Okay, let's see here. Can I know what's the difference between 22 fret and a 24 fret? Well, a 24 fret has 24 frets, right? Where a 22 fret only has 22. And that's not a bad thing, but the thing about 22 fretters is that for me, when you play a lot in certain keys, like in the key of A, okay, when you play on a 24 fret guitar, the key of A is still very accessible and comfortable. Most of the modern guitars will come with these new kind of modern heels like this, right? Instead of the blocks that they used to be, a lot of them come with that modern recessed heel. So when you play up in the key of A, for instance, it's really easy to reach on a 24 fretter. On a 22 fretter, you got to get up there a little bit more, and that's really the only difference other than having more frets being able to hit the next octave. So that's the only difference. Let's see here. I need your help with learning leads so bad. My leads are terrible. I got a problem with learning. It's a long journey to learn how to solo. The thing about leads is that I think sometimes, quite honestly, people just are constantly trying to focus on the wrong thing. And I know because I get obsessive compulsive about all kinds of things when it comes to guitar playing. I always have. But at the end of the day, and the most important thing is that when you're playing, you try and figure out how to play melodically and play with phrasing and connect to the music musically, okay? I always call it tipping your hat. Tipping your hat to the musical situation you find yourself in. And I know that's a big summary, but listen, that's why I have all these guitar courses to talk about soloing and things like that. But the goal is when you play, it has to do with the way that you maneuver, not so much whether you know all your theory or you're really fast or something like that. If you're playing over something like an A minor, all you'd really have to do is just play something. It depends. There's a million things you could do. But what it really comes down to is when that rhythm starts, let me just show you this example. So I'm going to go back to this little jam, which is an E minor. Okay, so as I listen, with that little jam right there, it's going from E minor to C to G to A minor. Okay? So as I look at that, I think, okay, so what key is it in? What do I know? What information do I have about this, right? Well, I know it's in the key of G major / E minor because all these chords, E minor is the 6, C is the 4, and you don't necessarily have to know this, but G is the 1, and A minor would be the 2. So they all fit in the key of G. So if I build my fretboard thinking about the key of G major / E minor, because they are the same, they have the same notes. Now, you might not know all of that. You might just know E minor pentatonic and just play E minor over the top. So if you know that, then you might move to the next level and you're using E natural minor or E Aeolian, right? That's what that is. And if you know that, then the next level is you start moving around trying to respond to those chords. So the next part, though, with that, kind of in tandem with that, is I'm thinking about the rhythm. Bump, 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 bump. Because as I'm listening to it, I'm figuring out where the downbeat will be. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now I know 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Can I play? This is meandering, and hopefully you've heard me talk about this because I talk about it all the time. So can I meander at that speed? Dun, 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 dun. And if I can, I have that as my fastest speed, and then anything slower, which would be just holding a note. Now, if I can go twice that, bum, 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 da, 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 da. If I can meander at that speed, now I can utilize that in my phrasing. Bum, 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 right? So as I listen to this again, let me pull it back up. I can move then to the next level. Ticka, 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 ticka. Now, I'm probably not going to meander that because that's pretty darn fast. Dun, 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 dun. But I could use that for licks, right? So I could use that. So I have dun, 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 ticka, 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 ticka. I could move between those. If I can do that, then the next step would be to start trying to think about the chords. So E minor's coming. Here comes C. Okay, here comes G. I'm on this note, so maybe I'll go. And then here comes A minor. Back to E minor, you see? So I start trying to add all those things together, and that's kind of how I get around. Now, all of that takes time to develop, but you've got your phrasing, you've got your melodic connection, and you've got licks, and you've got, most importantly, you've got a connection to the music, both the chords and the tempo/groove that's happening. So what am I playing through now that sounds amazing? Right now, I'm playing through, I don't know if I finished my thought on this, but I'm playing through a company called Chop Tones through my Kemper. So I love the sound of the Chop Tones one. I wouldn't use them live. And again, no disrespect. I'm sure there's a million people that use them live, but I don't use my Kemper live that often anyway for maybe littler gigs and stuff like that. But for this sort of thing, Chop Tones makes amazing sounds running through the studio, running it in the studio, recording with it, things like that. And this is actually the Jake E. Lee. This is one of the tones from their Jake E. Lee pack is what this is. So, okay, so I was going to get back to this quick conversation about playing live. So, real quick, there's a difference between playing with confidence and being in control, okay? And the most important thing is that you learn to be comfortable with who you are when you play on stage. I remember being a little kid back in my teenage years when I first started playing out, and the problem was that we were playing all this stuff like Queensryche and Rat and whatever, and I'm on stage and I don't know what to do with myself, okay? So not only am I, I've learned the songs. Here's number one. Know your material really, really, really well. And hopefully play with other artists or other musicians who know their material really well, okay? Because the number one thing is when you get up there and you get nervous in any capacity for whatever reason, because it happens, and you forget things. That's the worst thing that can happen. So being very well prepared is one of the most important things, is knowing your role. What is your role? I'm a guitar player and I sing background vocals. I'm a guitar player, I sing lead vocals. I'm a rhythm guitar player, I don't really do solos. I'm a lead guitar player, whatever it is. So when you get on stage, you're in control of your abilities, right? So for me, that was never a problem. I knew my stuff. I've always actually been overly prepared, which is why I get a lot of gigs, is because people like people that are always prepared. So that's never been a problem. The problem I had is I got out there and I hadn't really played and sang a lot, so I wasn't comfortable with getting in front of a microphone. And then when you're not in front of the microphone singing, it's like, well, what do you do with yourself? Like, you don't just want to stand there and look at least I didn't. I didn't just want to stand there and look at my shoes. And so, growing up when I did, the excitement aspect of the stage was very important. It wasn't just standing there, So I didn't know what to do with my body. That was one of the most awkward things for me. And the only way that came around was just doing once I started playing out, and I played out all the time. Got into a bunch of bands and was playing all the time. Then you start figuring out your stance and, all that. And I've always said you can tell when you watch somebody play, whether they're sitting down playing or whether they're standing up playing in a band or whatever. You can always tell when there's a comfort and confidence going on there, because you know how to present yourself. You're not being cocky, anything like that, but you feel good. And so when I learned that being in a band, playing on stage, playing on video, once I stopped looking at it as a contest and I started realizing that all I needed to do was figure out my voice on this guitar and be okay with that. Then all of a sudden, none of that really made any difference. And once I developed my comfort to be on stage, then all of that became really fun, and people responded to that as well. So that's what I would say, is to start off by making sure that you really know your material and that you're locked in with your band. Like, you guys have rehearsed a lot, because I know you have a gig tomorrow. That's what you had said. So if you haven't, you don't have any more time. But that's so important, is to get that all locked in and be with a bunch of players that, guys or girls that know what they're doing, and everybody knows their role, and everybody's going to be ready. And then you start working out this onstage thing on how do I, when do I sing, and, and that all, hopefully harmonies and things have all been worked out as well. And then you start figuring out what you're going to do up there. Do you just stand in one spot, or do you move around a little bit, or, that whole thing. I'm sure I just looked like a buffoon when I was a kid, because I didn't know what to do until I started figuring out, and then went, oh, okay, I could actually have fun with this whole thing. So let's see here. Any tips to improve strumming, rhythm, and grooves? Patterns seem unnatural and repetitive. Russ, what you need to do is go out either on the GuitarZoom website in the VIP section, or you'll be able to find something, I'm sure, on YouTube too. But look at ocean strumming. Look up organic strumming, ocean strumming, and look up my name. And look for some stuff like that. If you're looking for it in the GuitarZoom membership group, you'd look under, it's either under beginners or it's under technique. But the big thing is I don't play thinking about patterns. I think about responding to what I'm hearing. So as I'm playing, and it's a whole conversation, but you learn how to think about your arm as like a maraca, and it just never stops moving. So the reason I say this, and just real quick, Russ, is because when I first started teaching, I was teaching a group class, a group guitar class, which many of you have probably heard me say this, and I was super excited, and I was super nervous, and I made my own guitar book and all this stuff, and I was teaching them how to play chords, and I'd picked like 4 popular strumming patterns to teach them, whatever, and the class was going great. I had a bunch of people in the class, and they wound up, most of them wound up taking a subsequent class, and then a subsequent class, and what I wound up realizing somewhere along the line is that I was teaching these people to be zombies, because I didn't notice it at first, because I was so busy teaching that I wasn't really, it was all new to me. But once I started kind of realizing things, I was realizing that they were just playing the patterns that I was teaching them and nothing else. Like, so when they'd play songs, all they were doing was playing the patterns I was teaching them, the strumming patterns. And they weren't listening to the music, and they weren't trying to figure out how to connect either playing the guitar part or playing something. I always use Old Time Rock and Roll by Bob Seger as an example. I used to teach that song all the time because it's really easy to play with only 3 chords. The problem is when you listen to it, you don't really hear a guitar. You hear a very prominent piano, and you hear some horns in there, things like that, but you don't hear a guitar just bashing away. You hear some licks and things like that. And so the one thing that I wasn't teaching people is I was teaching them how to play old time rock and roll, and I was teaching them how to play a pattern that would fit old time rock and roll, but I wasn't teaching them how to listen and figure out how to play along musically. Like, how would we fit in musically with what's happening, even though we don't hear a guitar strumming pattern? We don't hear this prominent guitar pattern that we might hear when we hear, like David Bowie. Whatever, or, we hear a prominent pattern, and then we know what we're supposed to play. If the guitar's kind of in the background, we don't always know what to play. So think about that a little bit. And go find that organic strumming or ocean strumming. Okay? Let's see here. Have the Ibanez Monkey 8 green one. Very cool. Like, it just never took to it. Well, that's cool. It's a different kind of thing. I mean, moving to 7-string, moving to 8-string is a different kind of thing. The necks are substantially larger on those. It's like you got to find a reason to play it, Like 7-string stuff, there's a million great songs out there to play 7-string stuff. When you move to 8-string, you gotta have an idea of what you want to play too, because it kind of gets pigeonholed, right? I mean, I don't play old time rock and roll on a 7-string guitar. Not that you couldn't, because it's perfectly fine. But I like playing a 6-string guitar, and when I grab a 7-string guitar, I tend to play stuff. I don't play 6-string stuff on my 7-string unless it's necessary. If I'm in a gig and I've got my 7-string guitar, that's okay. That's perfectly fine. But I love the sound of the 7-string, so I learn things or write music that's 7-string based. Same with 8-string, but that's cool. Hopefully you'll figure out what you want to do with it. Let's see here. Have I ever played a Firefly guitar? I have not ever played a Firefly guitar. I don't know what that is. Okay, JP from Phoenix is here. How you doing, buddy? Let's see here. How are Schecter Banshees? I do not know. I owned a Schecter Hellraiser, and I just wasn't the biggest fan of it. But again, it has nothing to do with whether it wasn't a good guitar or not. I'm sure it was probably a great guitar. It just wasn't working on my confidence spectrum. It just wasn't working in there. And the older I get, the more I'm looking for guitars that are just more calm in nature. I don't, so that's kind of the thing. So I don't know how the Banshees are. And even if I did, it wouldn't really make any difference, because the most important thing, Tom, is that you try it and see what works for you. Okay. How many guitars do I own? I own a lot less now than I used to. I probably own, I don't even know, 25 guitars, maybe something like that, that I have in different places. I've got a number of them here. I've got some at a couple practice rehearsal spaces, and probably somewhere around there, something like that. But I used to own more of those when I was younger. I just got rid of a lot of them and kept some of the most important ones. So, watching here from the Philippines. I'm glad you could join us. That's awesome. Thank you. Okay, let's see here. I'm getting my rotator cuff repaired in 2 days. Going to suck being out for 8 weeks. It is. Bummer. I guess I'll learn theory. And remember, I wish I had it here, but if there's other things you can work on during that time, maybe you can just work on, one arm or the other. Just working on legato stuff. Like I have a device called a shred neck, if you've ever heard of those, that I'll use on the plane or, whatever. Or if I go on vacation with my family and my kids are swimming or something like that, and I'm just sitting out there waiting for them, I'll sit. It's just this little guitar neck, and I'll just practice doing legato exercises. I'll just do those, and it doesn't bother anybody. Doesn't really make any noise at all. Like I said, I'll use it when I'm traveling. I'll use it if I'm on the road. Or again, if I'm in the airplane, I'll bring it along and I'll just practice that kind of stuff. And sometimes I just practice picking exercises, just trying to develop stuff like that. So if you can use one arm or the other, you certainly could still do a lot of practicing like that, which is great. The Ramones, one of my favorite bands of all time. I love them. Greetings from Bama. Thank you so much for being here. That's awesome. Let's see here. I learned to play by ear as well before YouTube was made. Yeah, that was, if you're my age and you play, that's the thing, or older than me, that's how you learned how to play for sure. Okay, so what do we got here? It says, I love Jackson guitars, but I want to try out a Solar. I would love to try a Solar too. Actually, hopefully sometime in the near future, I'll be able to try out a Solar and let you know what they're like as well. Actually, right now, I'll show you this real quick. Got this guitar sitting here. There you go. This is by a company called Baldacci, okay? And I just did a demo of that Baldacci guitar. So I just finished it today, actually. And the neck on that thing is amazing. And again, it's a different kind of guitar. Obviously it's got the F-hole, it's semi-hollow. So it's got all of those characteristics, which are very different than what I normally do. But the Connor, the guy that builds those things, the Baldacci guitars, he's just meticulous about quality. And so it's just an amazing guitar. It's a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to play. And I'm going to be sad sending it back, but it was a cool guitar to play for sure. So hopefully I'll get a hold of a Solar guitar. We can try it out and see what those are like too. I got to get a hold of Jason Frankhauser and see about getting something. That'd be cool. So anyway, let's see here. There's just a lot of messages here, so I'm sorry if I don't get to everything. It's Mal from York in the UK. Love your courses. I use an Ibanez RG321. A very cheap guitar. I love it. That's all that matters, man. It doesn't matter whether or not it's expensive or not. It's finding what works for you. The rest of it is all hype. Find what works for you. I was born in 73, and Kiss has been one of my most favorite bands since childhood. Yeah, that's the way it is for me, too. Here's another one. Kiss, yeah, here we go. Did I ever get into Gary Moore? I friggin' love Gary Moore. Love Gary Moore. Absolutely one of my favorite guitar players too. So let's see here. Warren's the man. How do I like Savatage? I love Savatage. I just, it was early Savatage. So Gutter, that kind of stuff was the stuff I was into. What was the one, like Wake of Magellan or something like that? I think was the last Savatage stuff I was kind of into. Jason Becker, I remember him very well. Jason Becker, Air. Me and 3 other guitar players performed Air at one of my college recitals. It was all 4 of us played. It was this intertwining thing, if you know what Air is, by Jason Becker. Just absolutely incredible player for sure. Sad yet triumphant that he's still here and he's still doing what he does, which is amazing. Hank Williams, Ernest Tubb, absolutely. Let's see here. Believe it or not, it was the guitar player for ABBA that first made me want to play Les Paul. I tell you what, one of the first songs that I ever was absolutely in love with, not really guitar, but just songs in general, was a song called Living Next Door to Alice by Smokey, if anybody's ever heard of that before. So that song, I had the 45. I was a little kid. I had the 45, and I would listen to that song for hours on end. I would listen to this song. And it wasn't a guitar thing. At that point, I wasn't consciously thinking about instruments. I was enamored with the sound of the music. And it was that song, Living Next Door to Alice. That's one of the earliest songs I can remember. That I remember my dad introduced me to Hey Jude. That was a really early one for me. My mom listened to a lot of 50s doo-wop style music, at the hop kind of stuff, I should say. And so I grew up listening to a lot of that kind of stuff. Here's one, Brian Setzer, Chuck Berry. Yeah, see, that kind of stuff I listened to long before Kiss. I was into all of that kind of stuff. I was a big fan of like Sha Na Na, all that kind of stuff. I was a big fan of, oh man, what are they called again? That did Saturday Night. I don't remember what they were called, but you'll respond down at the bottom and I'll see it once we hang up. But I was into all that kind of stuff. It was that time. It's just my trajectory changed when I started listening to things like Kansas and all that stuff. Everything kind of changed. But anyway, Robin Trower, another great guitar player. Love him very much. Okay, The Doors and Grateful Dead. There you go. Again, all this great music. There's just so much stuff. Okay, let's see what this says here. Can you set up guitar for alternate tunings with the 10-gauge strings? Sure. I don't do a lot of alternate tunings. I do like drop tunings, but I don't do a lot of alternate tunings. I just never have. Not that I have anything against them, but to tune my guitar a certain way to play one song by the Rolling Stones or a couple songs. And I'm not saying there isn't a ton of other stuff out there. I'm just saying in my world, I just never really went that way because I was always worried about my neck, and then I'd have to retune, and I'd have to change certain strings for a certain kind of tuning, and I wouldn't be in there very long. Like I have my 10th, I'm sure you guys have seen my 10th anniversary gem, which is the one that has all the mother of, or the vine, and it's all decked out. And it was half step because I used to play in a band where I'd play that thing 4 nights a week. And we were always traveling, and I played that all the time. And then when that band quit, a couple of the other bands I got into, we didn't tune half step. We either tuned whole step in some of my bands, or we tuned standard. So that guitar sat, and I never played it because I wasn't doing anything half step anymore. And I would always feel bad because I love that guitar so much, but it was tuned to a tuning that I just didn't use very often. That was my whole thing with alternate tunings, is that I don't, unless I'm going to utilize it, I don't want the guitar just sitting there collecting dust because it's in a tuning that I wouldn't use. Now, you, Felicia, might tune that way all the time because the stuff you listen to is always in that. But I don't know what the proper string set would be for you. So I apologize on that. Maybe somebody else can help you with that a little bit. Let's see here. I like Steve Stevens playing White Wedding with just him and his guitar. Yeah, that's good stuff for sure. Got to have the EMGs. You're right, JR. It's huge for me, for sure. Hello from North Dakota, Montreal. Let's see here. The solo from Autograph, Turn Up the Radio. It's a great solo. Lots of great stuff back in the day, for sure. Marshalls or PV6505. They're both great. Okay. Let's see here. What does Jim say? Kemper's awesome. I run it direct for space and stage noise considerations. I'd rather use a Marshall in my 412, but you have to be realistic, and that's absolutely true. That's right. I mean, it depends on what you're doing and why you're doing it. It's absolutely true. Okay? Thanks for all you do and teach. Dallas, Texas loves you. Thank you so much, Elliot. I appreciate that, buddy. Okay? Let's see here. Keith from Detroit. Been around since the first masterclass. Awesome, Keith. I'm so glad you're here, bud. Okay? Hello. Crystal is here. Crystal, hello from Jersey. Hello from North Dakota. Glad you're here. Hi, Ivan. So glad you're here. How long was I in Grim Reaper? Not very long. Steve Grimmett, the singer from Grim Reaper, and I, we go back a long way. Back when there was no Grim Reaper, when Grim Reaper had broken up and he was in no place to be doing Grim Reaper, and he was doing his own thing in a couple of different bands, like Lion's Heart, things like that. Steve and I connected, and we did an album together called Grimstein. And ever since then, we've just been friends, and we do a lot of collaboration together, and we talk all the time. And so when Steve came over a couple of years, well, it was probably 3 or 4 years ago now, probably since COVID and all that stuff, he needed a guitar player over in the States because his other guitar player that normally plays with him in the UK and all over the place, wonderful guy. And so he couldn't be there, and so I just filled in with him. So it's not like I'm an official member of Grim Reaper or something like that. It's just there when he needs me. So yeah. So we started working on the second Grimstein album. Finally, we've got all the songs done. I've got to re-record them now that it's 2021 and the technology is different, and I just haven't gotten to it. I need to do that. So what guitar do I play live? I almost always play Ibanez Gems. Very soon, I'm hoping to be able to get this bad boy out, though, because this definitely be one that I would play live. But I've got like 3 Ibanez Gems that I tend to play live all the time. Those are the ones that I go to. Hey, Roger. Glad you're here, bud. Let's see here. I got a Yamaha RGX 612, and my new Kiesel Vader plays just as smooth and feels natural. That's awesome to hear. That's great. Let's see here. That's the dusty end of the fretboard. That happens sometimes for sure. Okay. What a fun room I have here. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. You can't see it, but I have a monitor set up, a column. They're EV 50 M's. So they're these columns, these magnetic columns that you put together. And yeah, so we play in here and make a bunch of noise, and my daughters come here. My oldest, we do acoustic stuff. My youngest plays drums, and we bash around in here. It's a lot of fun. So what's the easiest way to improve phrasing? Learning how to sing on your guitar. The easiest way to learn to improve phrasing is stop thinking about scales and think about singing. That's one of the most important things. Think about what a singer would do and try and play like a singer would play, or like a singer would sing, I should say. That's one of the biggest things, is don't think about scales and licks. Think about playing like a singer would sing. That's one of the most important things. Let's see here. I'm a firefighter. I was out 12 weeks on the last one, getting left arm fixed now, but yeah, it took almost a year to get back into powerlifting. Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's sometimes when you get injured, you got to take it easy, and the older you get, it's not easy to always recover. But what do I think about crate amps? To be honest, I haven't thought about crate amps in a long time. It's not something that I would want. It's not really the sound that I tend to look for. But that doesn't mean that Crate probably doesn't make. I didn't even know they were still making stuff, to be honest with you. But Crate was a big thing for a while, and I certainly owned some Crate, little 112s and little amps like that, little combo amps. I used to own some Crate stuff, but I tend to like Marshall. I love the JVM, the 2203, things like that. The PV stuff is cool. There's a lot of cool stuff out there. The Mesa stuff is cool. I used to own a dual rectifier that I really liked, and I tend to run a pedal in front of it. But it all depends, This Stealth is a 50 watter that I bought, which I just love. It works for some gigs I do. Sometimes it's not loud enough. Sometimes it's more than loud enough. It depends on the gig, but it kind of depends, Let's see here. Learning Give Me Shelter. It's driving me crazy. Yeah. Well, and that's the thing about the Rolling Stones stuff is it's kind of hard to replicate. Like there's a lot of stuff like that. The Rolling Stones for me have always been one of those weird bands that it's hard to make it sound like the Rolling Stones, you know? I can make a Ramones song sound more like the Ramones than I can a Rolling Stones song sound like the Rolling Stones. Because there's just a swagger and a looseness and I don't really, I always use the term drunken feel, even though I don't mean physically drunk. There's just something about it that makes it feel the way it does. And it's not always easy to replicate that sound, you know? So how many hours a day should I be practicing? That all depends on you. Some people practice 20 minutes a day. Some people practice 5 hours a day. I can't tell you how much. Depends on what your goals are. You know, if you want to get really, really, really good and you want to get in a band and you want to be kind of one of those showcase kind of guitar players, you know, it depends on what techniques you need to develop and how long it's going to take to develop those, you know. I mean, there was a time in my life where I practiced literally any extra time I had was spent practicing all the time. I'd practice 5, 6, 8 hours a day, you know, but I missed out on a lot of life doing that too, you know, just playing all the time. And I don't regret it. I'm very thankful for that. But my approach to guitar playing now is very different than it used to be because I don't, well, number one, I've already developed a lot of those techniques, but number two, I found a balance between having a life, having a family, and playing. So, you know, we're back in the day, I didn't have to find that balance. I didn't have a family. You know, all I did was I played guitar. I went to school, went to college, did my homework, all that stuff, got good grades, and didn't sleep. You know, me and my friends, we you know, going to college, you could rehearse at any time at night. You had keys to the studios and things like that. We did anyway. And so you could go there anytime you wanted to and practice, and we would, you know, so I just didn't sleep much, and kind of the story of my life, even now, really. Let's see here. I've got multiple courses from you, Steve, and wondering if you have anything sweep picking related. I know I've got some stuff that's sweep picking. I suppose I could revisit that and look at making a new sweep picking guitar course if anybody's interested in that, for sure. Okay. This is Leroy. How you doing, bud? It says, do you play any Grech guitars? I've played Grech. I just don't own any Grech guitars. And again, with my style, Grech isn't really what I'm looking for in the way I play. You know, I have one of my best friends in the world. His name is Dave Shocker, and he's done if you've watched any of my remote collaborations, he's done like the Alice Cooper one we did. He did Have a Cigar. We did Sweet Thistle Pie. I'm trying to think of some other ones that he might have been on, but he's one of my best friends. He's a Grech nut. He's a Strat nut. He's a David Gilmour fanatic. He's a Tom Petty fanatic. So we've been in bands together, but we're very different stylistically. But I love his playing. I love everything about his playing. If anybody knows Dave, I love his voice. I love his musicality. I just love the guy to death. But he plays Grech, and that's not really the style that I tend to play. That's the only thing. But do I think Grech makes amazing guitars? I certainly do, for sure. Okay, let's see here. I was talking to one of those salesmen at the local music store about tone. I told him I was using the Spark. He told that the amps with all those effects are not that good. Well, it's a personal opinion. I think the Spark is an amazing little amp for practicing. I'm not going to use it, you know, in the studio, and I'm not going to use it on stage. The Spark amp I do use I go to a very, 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 very small church, probably 50 people. And I used to go to a very big church and played there, and now I go to a very small church and play there. And the Spark is perfectly fine for what we do at church. But I wouldn't play it like at a show or something like that. For a backstage warm-up amp, the Spark would be absolutely perfect for me. Warm-up, you know, I use it for a warm-up amp, you know, at my house and things like that. So that's what I use the Spark for. So as far as saying tone, I think it's a really fun amp in replicating certain tones, but that's a different kind of tone. Like if I plug into that EVH Stealth over there through that Mezza Barba 412, and I play loud, that tone is not the same kind of tone that you're going to get from an amp with little speakers. That doesn't, they're not a comparison. I'm not using them for the same things, if that makes sense. Just like the tone of my Kemper can make amazing tones, but it doesn't have the same tone as that, my Metsa Barb amp, which isn't here right now. It's at a rehearsal space. But that's a different kind of thing when we say tone. So that might be what he's talking about a little bit too, is, tone is a subjective thing, but it very much depends on what you're using it for and what tone you're looking for. If you're just practicing at home and stuff, why would you need that, right? I mean, if you live in an apartment or something, you don't need that. It might be fun to have, but I remember owning, when I was a kid, I'd own amps that were 100 watts or whatever. I remember Fender had this metal amp, and it was like 200 watts or something like that, or 300 watts. And you try and turn it on, and you're on like 0.00001, trying to play it in your bedroom or, whatever. And then if you turn it just a hair over, it's just loud. So that's the problem too, is just like that 50 watter is great because I can turn it up really loud and really let it rip. It's a tube amp, and I can really, really push those tubes, where with a 100 watt amp, sometimes I can't, depends on the gig. But again, tone is such a subjective term, if that kind of makes sense. Okay. Let's see here. Sweet tones. Okay, I'm going to drop all the way, and just because I got to get going pretty soon, but I want to get to the bottom here. Crystal says she has a little cube, and that's the thing, is even the cube. Who made the cube again, Crystal? The cube is a cool little amp. Roland, right? Roland, Crystal. I think it's Roland that has the cube. And those were super popular for a while. They're great little amps. So there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with any of this stuff. That's the thing, is it drives me insane. Like when I do like this Baldacci guitar I was just telling you about, I don't make reviews. I just make demos, just showing people what the guitar is, how it sounds in the way I would set it up and play it, in terms of tone. But I don't try and sell people anything. I don't want you to go out and buy a Suhr any more than I want you to buy an Ibanez. I want you to find what works best for you. That's the most important thing. And, if you're never playing on stage, when I was a kid, I shouldn't say when I was a kid, when I was in my early 20s, I was playing in bands and things like that. So I had, amps that I would play on stage. And then back then, they didn't really make little practice amps other than, like Crystal was mentioning, the Cube, some things like that. There were other amps like that. Now we have all these really great digital amps, like Yamaha makes these THD amps, which are super cool. And, just little things like that you can use when you're, somewhere where you can't be really loud, or you want to plug it in and just play. That's really cool stuff that you can do. And even playing on stage. I mean, now with Kempers and things like that, you see some of my favorite players use this kind of stuff on stage, and they don't play loud anymore. There's no reason for it. Or they do play loud and they still use those kinds of things. So that's why I'm saying tone and brands and all this stuff, it's all so subjective to what it is that you like and what it is that's going to work for you. Like I play with this, every once in a while I play with this band in town. They're all college professors, and it's like a 6-piece horn. They're like a 10 or 12-piece band, and I play guitar with them sometimes. And they do a lot of Chicago and Earth, Wind, and Fire and all kinds of stuff like that. And for that band, my Kemper is a great amp because I'm not going to be really loud with that band, and I need a variety of tones to suffice some of the stuff that they're playing. So the Kemper is going to work way better than that. Where if I'm playing in my Judas Priest tribute band or something like that, I don't need my Kemper. That would work just fine, or the Metsa Barb, which is actually where that's sitting right now. That's a perfect amp for that because I don't need a bunch of different tones. I just need a heavy tone and maybe a little less heavy tone, right? Or a clean tone or something. There, Joey says, there's a perfect one right there. The Boss. They have the Waza Air. What's the one that they just had before that, Joey? The Katana. The Katana, that's what I was thinking of. Another great little amp, a little combo amp, kind of like what Crystal was talking about, right? Just a little combo amp like that is just a great thing. Do I ever play Hendrix-style rhythm? I play Hendrix-style rhythm a ton, as a matter of fact. Whenever I go clean, which I'm not right now, but if I ever go clean or cleaner, I love all that, all those kind of... way more than I do like the minor Hendrixy stuff, like the like any of that kind of stuff, or Foxy Lady kinds of things. It's the major stuff that Hendrix did that always massively appealed to me. You know, you think of like you know, all that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff, the greatest stuff ever. I love that kind of playing. Love it, love it, love it. Okay. What band did Paul Gilbert play with? He played with Mr. Big. That was one of the bands. He used to play with Racer X. That was another one that he had. Okay. But yeah, let's see what Max has to say here. Maz. Played through front of house with Helix, making the tone, mainly because I still carry my stuff, and that is much easier. Absolutely. And the older you get, who wants to lug all that stuff around, right? I mean, I don't want to lug around. I remember back in the day, you know, I'd play 4 412s on stage. I'd have 4 412s. Who wants to carry all that stuff, right? You won't even catch me doing that unless somebody's hauling it for me. So, yeah, I don't do any of that kind of stuff anymore. 1 412 I can tolerate. And 1 412, you had better have wheels on it. So, or a you know, a four-wheeler to throw it on or something like that. That's the way it's got to be. So anyway, yeah, I suppose I better get going here pretty quick here, but I just want to see here. Crystal says, is your new lead guitar program going on sale for Christmas? I am not sure, Crystal. I don't know what's going on sale for Christmas or not. I would assume so, but I'm not in charge of any of that kind of stuff, so I really don't know. Let's see what Jim says here. Definitely Katana. I have the MK2100, but I've owned Spark, Fender, Mustang, Marshall Code. Nothing is more versatile than the Katana. I tell you what, I had a Katana that I donated to our church, but I really enjoyed it. So it's just, for me, yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, whatever works for you. So I think all of those are really great. Let's see here. SRV and Little Wing. I could listen to. I just love all that kind of stuff. Love that kind of playing. Love that kind of playing. Could sit and do that all day long. Okay. Here, Greg says, "Yeah, 4 412s look so cool." You're right. Until you got a backache and can't carry them around anymore. It is a canoe. That is a canoe up there. This space right here used to be a place where they stored stuff for the Boy Scouts. And now it's my space. They don't have Boy Scouts here where I live anymore. So that canoe is going to go somewhere someday. But I told him, I said, you can store it there for right now. It actually kind of looks fun up there. I just need to get a ladder and go up there and take some shots inside of there. Find a canoe paddle and take some pictures. So let's see here. Do your mic and or isolate your amp on stage? I mic the amp on stage. I don't usually isolate. I just wind up doing an outside wash. Usually because I'm so freaking loud. So either I'll do called a side wash, an outside wash. So I'll either point it my direction depending on how big the stage is, and if I'm still killing the drummer or something, I'll turn it away a bit. But it depends on the size of the stage. So if it's a really big stage, I might wash inside a bit, turn it at a bit of a slant. I almost always use straights if I'm only bringing 1 or 2 cabs. I tend to run 1 straight cab or 2 straight cabs. I don't use the slant cabs very often. Some people like that slant tone. I've gotten used to over the years, because I've been doing this my whole life, I've gotten used to the tone of what it sounds like. Again, this comfort thing with the sound of a straight cab shooting out this way as opposed to the slant cab shooting up. Okay. When I used to run 4/4-12s, I'd run 2 straights and 2 slants, but that's just, I haven't run that in years. But there are times where I'll still run 2 4/12s and I'll run 2 straights like that. And the tone that I get when I run it like that makes sense to my ear. Like if I was going to go sit in front of that right now and then turn it on and play with me sitting in front of there, it would sound weird to me. And then if I stood up and played, it would sound like it's supposed to sound. Because again, remember, when you're playing on stage, depending on how far back your amp is too and where it's facing is going to sound different. If it's right here from you versus 20 feet back, it's going to sound different. So these are all things you want to kind of think about when you start learning to play on stage, So anyway, hopefully that works for you. Picks. I use 2 different kinds of picks. And then I got to get going here. But I use these John Petrucci, these ones right here, these whatever color this is, these kind of purple ones. I use those, and then I use hawk picks. And it depends on the guitar head. I know that's weird, but it depends on the guitar on which ones I'm going to use. On this particular guitar, and I don't know why, these Petrucci Dunlops feel really good. On my gems, I tend to use the hawk picks. They're all 2.0. They're all really hard. They all have a really fine point on them. So that's what I tend to use. So anyway, hopefully that helps you, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Seriously, thank you for your time. Thank you for hanging out with me. I am always blessed to be able to spend time with you guys. So take care and stay positive, and obviously keep practicing, and be careful with, getting caught up in the guitar and the amp. It's fun. If you're having fun with it, that's great. If it's stressing you out, it doesn't matter whether you have a $200 guitar or $2,000 guitar, as long as you're having fun. Okay. And if you decide you need something a little bit better in whatever capacity, that's wonderful. And I'm always here to help you as best I can with any information. But I'm telling you that none of that stuff makes you a rock star. It's you who makes you a rock star. So, all right, everybody, take care. Stay positive.